And now they can hear us, hopefully. The stream hasn't stopped and hasn't changed. But even so, I'm going to wait for the chat confirmation so
I
that
can
I
see us.
know that you guys can hear us and see us. Give me a sign. Um, Wonderful. They hear us. Thank you. Alyssa Animator, what song is this? If a shameless company plug. It's from the new sessions for Star Guardian Talia. It is streamer free, rights free content. It's really excellent. Anyway, enough of that. Welcome back to the stream, everybody. For anyone who might be just joining us, we just concluded a fantastic presentation by data scientist Adam Clark, still here with us. Hello, Adam.
Howdy,
Uh,
howdy.
and now we are about to dive in with some discussion amongst peers, a group of game dev and animation professionals. If you have any questions that you would like to be, would you be interested in being answered by our panel here, please pop them in the chat and make sure you tag at AnimState so that I can really clearly see them. And I'll do my best to sort of monitor that while we talk. But before we begin, why not go around and do some introductions? I know I just said your name, but Adam, why don't you give us another quick intro?
Yeah, sure. So, hi all. You just saw me. For those of you who didn't, my name is Adam Clark. I have a master's in quantitative, qualitative, and psychometric methodology from the University of Nebraska-Lincoln, and I am the data scientist working with AnimState to present all this wonderful information this time around.
Hello, everybody. I am Ju Li Khaw. I am a senior animator for Arcane Austin. I also went to school, and I also help run the Animation Exchange, so you probably know me from there.
Hi there, I'm Saul Brennan. I'm a regular / technical character artist / whatever the hell you want to call me or us as a discipline. I have 10 years in the games industry, currently at Heart Machine, makers of Hyper Light Breaker. Hyper Light Drifter and Hyper Light Breaker is the one that's coming. So, and that has been announced, and that isn't breaking NDA, so we're all good.
It's like, you heard it here first.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah. Yep.
Is it my turn?
It is.
Yep. Go for
Oh,
it, Jay.
everyone's staring at me. Hey,
Yeah.
I'm Jay Hosfelt. I'm one of those people that are 25 year plus. I've been in the games industry for 28 years. I just left 18 plus year stint at Epic Games, and now I'm animation director at an unannounced studio, a little indie dev studio we're starting up.
Very exciting. Well, thank you all for those intros. Once again, my name is Lana Bachynski. I am a lead animator at Riot Games, currently working in research and development. And I'm your host today. So I took so many notes. I don't know about y'all. The whole time I was talking, based on the chat, based on what I saw you saying in the chat. But before I dive into any very specifics, I really want to know up top, what was your sort of favorite statistic or anything that specifically surprised you about the presentation? And we can have anybody who wants to jump in.
I'll give mine real fast, and it's kind of due to my current obsession. You know, like after leaving Epic, I had 4 or 5 months off just to reflect on the prior 28 years and what did it all mean? What were the good times? Why were they good times? What were the bad times? Why were they bad? And so I've been getting philosophical about it myself, about what is happiness and fulfillment and all that stuff. And one thing I could say as a fact is, looking back, is money never was the happy factor. Sometimes when I made the most money ever, I was the least happiness. So I knew to rule that out. And what came down to fulfillment, honestly, is, you know, we're all on a team, working together, and people sometimes don't know they're doing a good job. So it's like very important for us to just let the person next to us know they're doing a good job. And that is more valuable than those raises and all that. And sometimes as leads, we can just assume people know they're doing a good job, but that is like more powerful than money. And my analogy is like Monsters Inc. You know, they went out to gather the screams from kids. And I'll ruin the movie, spoiler alert, but at the end they find that laughter is like a billion times more powerful. And so to me, telling people good job, that's the laughter, versus the screams, you know. So I hope that makes sense. But so to me, seeing that data show that fulfillment and happiness wasn't tied to money was kind of cool. And I think we could all just keep pushing forward, knowing some of that knowledge.
Mm-hmm. I definitely thought it was interesting. Like in the chat, I mentioned that I was sort of surprised that money wasn't a big motivating factor, which is maybe overselling the reaction a little. I was surprised that it wasn't a bigger one. But saying that you were not surprised at all, I thought was fascinating. Was anybody else like, oh wow, people don't care about them dollars?
I mean, I think in retrospect, like I think when you see it in the graph, you would think that like if you're being paid more, people would be more satisfied, right? But I think like if you think about it in terms of like job satisfaction is kind of a sliding scale, right? So like as you are at a job, technically you learn different things about your company, and then you start to like, you know, harbor different resentments at that company. And so even though you're being paid more, your job satisfaction as you're at that company might be like, you know what I mean, like going down like that. So I think that because job satisfaction is kind of a moving target for everyone, it makes sense to me that, you know, it doesn't, when you're looking at the overall graph, being paid more doesn't necessarily mean more job satisfaction. In my opinion. However, it's like if you're gonna jump to another company anyway, then might as well be paid more. Like that might also make sense to me. So
yeah, I do want to point out making more money doesn't hurt.
No.
I do want to jump in and say that, like, I think we could take a step back and at least say, as us as a group of people. Now, I don't know about you, Adam, but like we're probably all pretty well compensated for our levels, at least more so than maybe a lot of people, especially coming out of school, especially for our years, right? Like I know for a fact that I'm definitely in the upper echelon of compensation, and that a lot of people are often quite surprised to find out what my comp is, and also that I think that it's less about money and more about comfort. And for me, the money is not about how much money I have. It's about, one, how much control does this give me of my life externally from the job, right? Like, for example, I got a big IPO check from working at Unity that enabled me to buy a house. That has been one of the biggest happiness factors in my recent life, right? Out of all the things, because finally my status isn't in flux. I'm somewhere where I know I'm rooted, and that's really important to me, right? But beyond that, my new job, I actually took a pay cut because I got what I wanted, right? And the job satisfaction was not there in my prior job, but I'm glad I got what I got. And now I'm like, well, now I just want to maintain comfort levels, right? And seek something beyond the money. I mean, I still get paid very well comparatively, but I would also caution that I think it's a little bit dangerous or maybe disingenuous to say that money doesn't matter. And perhaps in next year's data survey, we could maybe collect something to, maybe if it's not too personal, to say that like how important is money as a factor in your life, and also how comfortable are you in your cost of living, right? Because some people have much lower cost of living just by the nature of what they enjoy. Some people have higher. I think the thing that does drive it a lot, I would say, is that I think where I've seen dissatisfaction in regards to pay the most is when people are learning what their colleagues are learning and colleagues are earning, and they are off by that and are doing a similar job. And I think learning what other people earn at other companies is a lot more distant. Yeah, but it's about respect.
The company.
Yeah. So, but going back to what Jay said, it's like saying good job. Money isn't necessarily like the driving factor. It's a part of the parcel that says good job. We value you. This is your compensation, right? But if you're getting paid significantly less than someone who's doing a similar job to you, and their output is not even like less, right? But or maybe say that they're actually an active disruption, right? In a lot of scenarios, and causing extra work for you, then you come to resent that, right? And I think that's much more what it's about, personally.
And I know I've had a talk with like some of their friends in the industry as well, and like they'll get, because I mean, like obviously if we all wanted to make more money, like I would not be an animator, I would obviously be a programmer. Very clearly, like I made very wrong decisions in my life. But because like in the end, this is a business. So like me and my employer, this is a professional relationship. What I do is I give you work and you give me money and probably title. Like those are the two ways that you can show me that I am doing a good job and that you appreciate me and that you think that I'm growing or whatever. So like I've had a friend before, you know, who like asked for money, and then people be like, why would you ask for money? Like, don't you think like, you know, like, don't you love what you do? And it's like, it's not really about that. It's like knowing your value and knowing how much the company values you. So it's like, you know, and I do think that like what you were saying about like level of comfort and then maintaining level of comfort, we actually do kind of see that in the graph, because like when we're looking at like years of in the industry and then how much, like you'll notice like once it gets to a certain point, it kind of like it doesn't go up all the way. It like kind of plateaus, as in like people are making more decisions not based on increasing their salary at that point. Like, you know, like when you're 15 years into the job, you're at a certain level already, and as long as you stay within that band or whatever, then like you're free to kind of like make a different choice, you know, like take a pay cut to chase like a creative vision or something like that as well. So I think that is a great question. Like we should ask that, because I think that does factor into it.
Yeah.
And there is a conundrum on the data, is like the reason people left companies was for higher pay.
Well,
And so it is a factor, but is it like they think they'll be happier because of pay? You know, because some of the studies I've read is like, if you get a pay boost, if you're at a job and you're not having that fun, and you get a pay boost, it lasts for about 2 months, because 2 months later your bills are all back to it. Like it feels like a normal life again. Like you don't feel like you have extra money. You're just now at a stasis. Whereas improving morale and that kind of stuff just goes much, much further. There's no amount of money that you can constantly feed employees to keep them happy.
Yeah.
And so I feel like sometimes when people chase higher salary, I think they're chasing that feeling of a company just wanting them, and higher salary is a way to show it. So I think someone asked on here, like, what do I think of that conundrum? And personally, I think that's it. I think high salary is part of it, but people just
Well, one
I mean,
thing
there's
I
that,
think
sorry, go ahead.
Lana, sorry.
Yeah,
Oh,
please,
okay.
Lana, go
Well, the
ahead.
one thing I think would be interesting about that is, sure, like, why did you leave the company? It's better pay. But I think a lot of people like form these bonds. They do have those emotional connections, and then they're like the work that they're doing or their life they're living or whatever, that pay can't like reach what they want to do, or like Saul said, like they're seeing other people who are making more but doing the same job. And so maybe the reason they left was better pay, because they liked where they were otherwise. Maybe they had like these emotional connections. And so it'd be interesting to see, okay, why did you end up leaving? Better pay. Why did you end up searching for another job? I think is sort of a partner wondering to what it was. Maybe it was because you're just not making enough. Maybe you weren't feeling respected at your company. Interesting to see where that would go.
I think the second like highest one underneath better pay was like frustrations with your studio, if I remember correctly.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
I do want to swing back around though to sort of like the other side of your initial conversation point, Jay, where it's money versus sort of the social element to it. One of the things I loved most about the presentation specifically was the analysis of the factors that contribute to job satisfaction. I talk a lot about community and the value of community. Particularly, community is an important part of cultivating a healthy team, you know, saying that good job for people and making them feel wanted and making them feel like they're part of something bigger than themselves. And so when Adam started listing off the job elements that carried the most weight regarding that, opportunities for career growth, confidence in leadership, work-life balance, training provided, it felt super validating for the way that I believe. And also, I do look at each of those things as like a piece of a puzzle that makes up a healthy community. and are a part of where that satisfaction came from. But perhaps that's just confirmation bias.
I
I don't think so. I think. Oh, sorry, Adam. You're the data
Oh.
scientist.
thank you.
No, scientists first.
Thank you. So honestly, I would really like to see how these factors, if they do change or if they're constant, held across level of seniority. So associate or a junior versus a mid-level versus a senior level. Like let's say animator or our leads, that kind of idea. Uh, because the needs of a person in terms of team integration and everything change. I would imagine would change based on seniority, experience. I mean, there are probably invariant factors that someone would always need, but how does training or need for on-site training change across years of experience or communication with leadership, that kind of idea? When you're at the lead level, who is the leadership? Is it the producer? Is it the director, like the board, that kind of deal? What is it?
Yeah. One of the questions we had in chat earlier as part of the discussion happening during your presentation was from Michael Esque. What do we mean by training? The question was, does your studio provide the necessary training to do your job well? I would love to know what all of you consider would be the necessary training.
I mean, I
Well,
guess
I've-
like for me, it'd be onboarding of any kind when you join a company. Usually, if they have proprietary tools of any kind or any kind of an engine, I feel like any kind of help there. I mean, I think someone else rephrased it in like the thing of just being like, did you think that you had adequate knowledge to perform your job? And I think like that's a very interesting way of saying things, because I have been at companies who have had lots of training, and I've been in companies who are just like, get to work, and that's probably that's how I would just say it, is probably onboarding. But I would also think that if you gained other responsibilities, like how much information would you have to move that way as well, and leadership, like how many people will train for leadership. But yeah, Sol, please.
Yeah.
Oh, I was just it's an interesting one, because I have seen all sorts of different levels of training. For example, I've seen more like my first company and other companies I've actually had formal training where it's like they'll pay for you to go on a course or pay for you to spend time developing a skill that you need to learn up, and the company is not receiving any work from you during that time, right? It's not like we are doing this so you can produce this asset, right? It's like literally we are sinking money and time into you for you to do this at work, and we're paying you for that benefit, right? And that for me, when someone says providing training on a job, that's what I think. I think a lot of us are not used to that, right? That's what traditionally training would mean, I think. And for us, a lot of us, it's just training by proxy, right? Like for me, I've never had a formalized course. The only formalized thing I had was at Unity, where they gave us leadership training, which was 2 days. And it was more about company values than true leadership training. It was more about how to learn how to listen, but it was all within the pillars of like the company's values. But for all my training, if I can, if I call it that, is my training. Yes, I can hear you. I don't know if you can hear me. Okay, bye. But all my training has been often top down, like or colleague to colleague, like showing me how to do a thing that I didn't know how to do, or teaching me why this thing's important, or me, and conversely also teaching. Like I when I was at Somniac, I think I trained like 2 or 3 interns, and I think all of those interns went back to the company to work. So I must have done an okay job at not scaring them away. And a lot of that was showing them what's important, how to break down tasks, shortcuts that I use, and then also teaching them about the proprietary stuff at the studio, showing them existing documentation, also encouraging them to contribute to documentation. And so, but that for me, I feel like that's part of the job, more so than external, like the company is actually investing in you and investing in your growth. But that's just my take.
Yeah, I feel like a healthy company realizes that a junior coming in, or heck, anyone new to like proprietary software, they're not going to know what they need to know up front. And the company understands that there's a multitude of ways to get that training, whether it's like official classes or individual classes. Epic was good. We had organic lunch and learns, but we also had, if you wanted to learn Python, you could go take a college course and they'd pay for it. We brought in experts to do classes, like whatever worked. And I think that's just, the studio just needs to recognize people need to keep learning, and it's a long-term investment.
The one thing the last thing I want to
okay.
say really quickly was like, the only thing I don't like, and this has happened to me, is where they were like, okay, we'll invest for you to train this down, but you got to do it outside hours. I think that's bullshit.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Agreed. So
Yep.
just to take this conversation and point it right back at the data again, I know I kind of derailed there with that question. But I actually want to go back to something that you mentioned, Saul, specifically about quality of life in different places and depending on where you live. We had this conversation also with Mike Jungbluth when we got a first look at the data, Julie, Adam, and I. And one of the things that is captured pretty clearly is the more you move, the more you get paid, and the more satisfied you seem to be. Considering the average number of studios that was that people work at over the years, remote exceptions for people, or the work from home opportunities for people, seems to be like a huge game changer in being able to set up roots somewhere where the cost of living is somewhere you can balance your own work satisfaction from pay to the things you want to do. So based on the data, 1 to 7 studios worked at over the course of a career. And in the past, that means 1 to 7 times in your life, you're possibly picking up your whole life and moving it somewhere in like a huge shift of your entire existence. But now with the advent of work from home, we're looking at potential for people to actually put down roots with a degree of confidence that they can stay put. What do y'all think about that?
So there was one thought I had, and this doesn't answer the whole thing about the work from home, but the statistic that surprised me in the beginning was that the more people moved around, the higher their salaries were. And it didn't surprise me. It just made me like question the why. And I wonder, like, Adam, what your opinion is. Like, I feel like the minute you leave a company and go to another one, you're forcing a conversation about salary. Like, you're forcing negotiation. Whereas if you stay at a company for 5 years, you may never bring up the topic. You will never negotiate with that company. So I think it's like, I wonder if the stats would be different if you forced yourself to negotiate your salary with your company you're at every year, or to match the same as moving. Do you know what I mean?
I'm shaking my head here because I've done that, and it doesn't work. Because they know, if I'm going to be honest, a company knows they've roped you in, right? You're in a place you don't want to move, right? Especially before work from home, right? You know that if your options are to move, say this is the only studio in the area, especially because this is a big problem. I'm from Scotland. The only studio around there was Rockstar. The reason I left is because I didn't want to work at Rockstar, because that's the only option, right? And they didn't. Back then, the work-life balance was supposedly bad, and the pay wasn't great because they're the only people around. So, like, a company knows if you're going to play a game of like chicken with them, right? They're going to win because the amount that you have to give up, right? Your friends, your family, your community. If you have kids, the schools that they go to, their teachers, their friends, any kind of security you have in that area is challenged. And they know if they hold out long enough, you'll be like, it's not worth it, right?
And also,
that's a good point. You don't have negotiating power. The only time you have any negotiating power at all is when you're going to a new company, because
they want you.
It also skews their data. Like in their opinion, paying you that much is not worth it to them, because then that screws it up for their company. Like considering that, like, let's say you're part of a team, so your salary is like a certain level based on like everyone else's salary, right? Like you're not getting paid more than your lead. You know what I mean? Like people underneath you that are not a senior or whatever are not getting paid more than you, right? So if they negotiate, maybe. But like, you know, and before, you know, a lot of this information was not shared as well. But like, let's say like now you hear like, you know, oh, this person is getting paid more than me for doing the same job. Like that's upsetting, right? So like imagine that with like the extra step of like, hey, pay me the same amount that this company would. Like now they've screwed up the like, you know what I mean? Like, and I'm not, by the way, I'm not arguing for companies here. I'm just saying that this is why they won't do it, is because
Actually,
like,
this
in
is
the
a good
end,
point.
it'll cost them more throughout the entire department, right? They have to raise everyone's salary accordingly to meet that.
So I obviously did a job hunt recently, and part of my job hunt search, I discovered that traditional AAA big companies actually were paying and offering me significantly less than newer, nimble indie companies. And I think it's because like this is the problem, right? Like if you're at a company that's been established for 25 years and they have a hierarchy and they have a bunch of people and they know what they pay people and they know what they can get people for, especially, and they know that if they hire you at, say, higher pay for a job that is like, you know, like not like a director level or something like that, right? And it gets out that you're getting paid significantly more, then that's really going to mess with them, right? And they just won't move. So I applied for companies that I told them this is my expectation, and they immediately just backed out and said, nope, we can't match that, right? Even though it was competitive, even though other companies would pay me that, right? I think the older a company is, the bigger a company is, and the lower you're applying at a level, I think they'll make exceptions on the grounds that you won't be going around telling everybody what you get earned or what you get paid for very high up hires. But on the lower levels, like they're not gonna screw up a good system they have, right? They do all their earnings, all their forecasts, and all their production based on these averages. And if they start meeting, you know, like that's why companies that are, say, making games earn a lot of money that in a very high cost of living area pay very little sometimes, because that's what they've done traditionally and they can continue to get away with it. And yeah, it's just I think if you are looking for that, it's surprising the bigger players actually pay less.
Absolutely. I do actually just want to jump in with some support on that. I mean, I think it also has to do with that idea of like the lower levels, the juniors, that kind of idea, not being at a studio for very too long in their career kind of deal, or looking around for other options if other options are available. At least that's my perceptions living in the LA area. And that kind of also gets put into the factor of like, oh, okay, yeah, go on to the next one, I guess. That being said, coming from the very large, let's say a AAA studio kind of deal, they can name the price and there's other people that can work in what you're doing kind of deal. Is unfortunately what the sentiment is. I do not want to be doom and gloom at all, so I'm sorry.
I think being realistic is not doom and gloom. It's important for people to like know the reality. There's a great question from the chat from Technically an Animator. Do y'all think that remote work is creating more uniform salary bands per role across different locations, which could be better for lower cost of living places or worse for higher cost of living places?
In my experience, if it depends on the company. It depends on the company in terms of if they are taking that into account or if they have opened it up to different commuting, like different hybrid spaces, and or like, you know, I think there's like some like Bungie or whatever. A lot of times they will limit it to certain states because that's where they understand the tax benefits of that. In my experience, it doesn't necessarily create a more uniform salary band because they like look at where you're applying from or going to be, and then they take that cost of living into adjustment and then adjust you into their salary band.
They
so
absolutely
like
do, yeah.
Yeah, so you would be making like, yes, I would be making more, but also I am paying $3,000 in rent here. You know what I mean? So like cost of living wise is actually the same as if I had stayed here and made like a lower base salary. But that is just my experience.
I think one of the things I would expect if I were like speaking to a company or negotiating with a company where they have that expectation, where they're like either standardizing it in the sense, I would not expect them to standardize the number. I would expect them to standardize the quality of life. And so if you're paying people like enough to live like comfortably, be able, in my opinion, every company should pay you enough to have at least a 1-bedroom apartment close to the office. That is my like that should be the minimum bar. And live alone, not roommates. When it's your career, I have some very
Oh well,
strong
that's
opinions.
out the window then.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah, I was
That's
gonna
how
say,
I
like, you
feel.
see some 1-bedroom.
That's how I think
Yeah.
that companies should.
I-
Maybe a studio. Maybe I'll bump down to a studio. But I believe that if it's your career track and you are have years of school and pay and time that you've put into this, and they respect you as an employee, that's what they should provide. And so I would expect in another place that they might adjust the pay to provide the exact same thing in somewhere where it might be cheaper. So you would be making less, but you would still be able to, at minimum, afford an apartment that you can live in by yourself in a place that is close to the office location. That is sort of how I would.
I do think.
I mean, I have an interesting
Sorry.
bit of data on this. I really want to, like, because actually I experienced this, right? At Unity, we had like 7,000 employees, and when we went remote from home, they tried to get us to come in, blah blah blah. In the end, they were like, okay, we'll support, you know, work from home under certain circumstances. You have to get it cleared with like management. And a friend of mine was trying to stay in the Seattle area but move to Tacoma. Now Tacoma was far enough from their Bellevue office that they considered that out of the area and therefore dropped the cost of living. And so this person was going to take a salary bump down because they were moving statistically like maybe like 30 miles away, right? On top of that, but the company maintained the line of, oh, we pay adjusted to cost of living area. But on top of that, someone had chimed up internally that they were being encouraged to hire from lower cost of living areas and being told not to take applicants from higher cost of living areas. So I actually think the remote thing might work against us in some degrees, because managers now see that as, well, we can get the same talent somewhere else in the country way cheaper. We're not going to pay these San Francisco salaries. And so the company at the top level was saying, we want people to come back into office, but when it came to doing their money and like all the hiring, they were like, don't hire people in San Francisco because that's too expensive. Get them for the Midwest. So
Yeah,
like,
I mean, like
it's fucked up.
Yeah, that
Yeah.
goes with what I was wondering as well, where it's like, as people are taking this kind of cost of living things, like if I decided to move to somewhere with a higher cost of living, are they going to increase my salary because of that choice that I made? I feel like most studios would not do that. But they will probably do. They should, but they would
A slider
probably
that
do
only
a
moves
full
down.
set. Yeah, they would probably do a full set where it's like, if I move to a cheaper place, though, they would lower my salary, which is what it seems like. Like it's an interesting conundrum, because like I've seen that as well, of just being like, hey, I want to move to this area. Especially like, I mean, I work in Texas right now, so like people want to move out of Texas for lots of reasons. And like, you know, what about that? Like, are you going to pay people then the different cost of salary for moving out of the state because it's not safe for a lot of different groups? Like,
so we spent a lot of time talking about salary, but there was a lot more in the survey that wasn't just salary based. One of the things that has happened in previous years on the salary and is still reflected in this one that I think is really important is talking about the various issues that game developers and animators perceive as important, and the various sort of areas in game development that they think are being faced with challenges or with struggle. So one of my favorite stats is that 44% of our respondents believe that culture in general is a problem in the games industry, whereas on the flip side, only 15% of those same respondents perceive that there is a culture problem at their own studio. Do you think that we're only getting survey results from like 3 hidden gems of industry studios with no culture problems? Or do you think that it's possible that 75% of responders don't perceive where they are to be a part of a greater industry issue?
Can I ask a question to Adam here?
Of course.
On that note, right? How many percentage-wise of our respondents might be in the category that is less marginalized, right? Like say cis white men, right? When they answer that question, right? Because I know that many of my cis white men friends know that there's a problem. They see it happening, right? They see it happening to the people it being talked about, but they're not seeing it with their own eyes in their own studio because they're not being exposed to it, because there's either a lack of trust or people don't feel enabled to talk about it. And so it's not necessarily that they believe that their studio is good or a prime example, but they are just this, I guess, statistically it might be weighed, and the people answering that question know it's a problem but aren't seeing it because they are the majority.
It's honestly a great question, because I would love to go off on this one. Yeah, so it's I would say a lot of it's also attributed to like this not my neighborhood effect is what I would call it. You ask someone in a neighborhood, be like, hey, what do you think about the state of crime in your state? And they would say, oh, it's terrible. Well, what about your neighborhood? Not my neighborhood. No, it's fine. They have all these roots or have all these interactions, and they might have their own cliques, that kind of idea, for better or for worse. And they truly honestly believe, because they have that like rose-colored glasses with their own surroundings, hey, they either don't notice things, they don't pick up on things like you were saying, or they do see things and it's downplayed. But it is super there, and part of the problem with reporting it on the data, reporting with the data this time around, like I said, I believe it was 77% were white, 70% were male. You have to be really careful going through the data, breaking it down, combing it through, and making sure you eliminate or give fair voice to smaller groups of individuals, because that's, with such a large amount and such a large percentage, it's just like this overbearing voice on each data, on each question kind of deal. Sorry, did I hit the question well?
Yeah, which was basically like, is it possible that the reason that data is off is because it's statistically weighed to be off, right? Because of the type of respondents that are typically responding.
I've seen it in practice. Like one of the studios that I was at, like I remember when I was there were like discussions of Gamergate was going on at this time, which oof, topic. I remember like I was asked if being called Oriental was a problem, was offensive to me. And then I remember that as we joined a bigger company, we had talks about like, you know, this like kind of harassment or racism or, you know, inclusivity in the company. And they're like, it's great here. And I was like, I mean, okay. And like it was a majority male white company, obviously. It's just like how the demographics worked out. And so I think that like I've seen it multiple times, in fact, like as an outsider and as an insider, of people just thinking that like, I mean, and it's also just a common thing, like not even in the games industry, right? It's always like a common thing for people to be like, well, I'm not part of the problem. Like I'm not racist or I'm not sexist or whatever. Like as long as you're kind of doing the bare minimum, like as long as like people aren't like slapping asses in the studio, they think like my studio doesn't have a problem with culture. And then I think there's something that happens with a lot of studios as well, even ones that are maybe a little bit more progressive, where because they're a bit more progressive, they also then don't push it further. You know what I mean? They're like, we have women in leadership, we have this happening. So like, we're actually doing pretty good from the bar of the industry standards. So now, you know, we can just like coast off this reputation. And that's also what
that's, sorry, I didn't mean, don't want to interrupt.
I'm done.
Oh, okay. That's something I really wanted to stress with some of the earlier line graphs for the like the line graphs for income across user experience, for gender, for race, and just why I was stressing so much that left-hand side factor, being like, you can see these lines are really close at the lower levels, but as soon as you get into the higher levels for both of those different factors, you start seeing it splay out more and more. And I do believe it's kind of like has something to do with what you're talking about in terms of like, okay, we've hit the quota, we've done the PR, we have X amount of new hires or junior developers, but we're not seeing or we're just now starting to see individuals getting into more experience, more years of experience, higher positions, who are not just cis white men, that kind of ideal. And they're not reporting or being transparent about the attrition levels, I would say, of individuals who are, well, not cis white men in the industry.
Yeah. So I've got two quick things. One, for anyone listening, if your bar for acceptable, it means you haven't spanked anyone yet today, you're part of the problem. Two, this is
Good time not spanking people though. That's still good.
two, it's kind of questions for chat, kind of combining a couple of questions from chat. One specifically, something Betta said, or that we've had a couple specific questions about pieces of data that were not cross-referenced in the presentation. Specifically, of the 4% that experienced harassment, how did they identify, or sorry, left a job due to harassment, how did they identify? I know in the past with the results, we've done like a cleansing of like location data, so you couldn't like pinpoint any specific individuals, like kept it anonymous.
Oh yeah.
In the future, or like for something like this, if somebody's interested in how some stats intersect, would that be something that you would welcome people to like tweet at you questions? Would it be something that you'd like us to gather some questions and we can have additional information on AnimState, or is that possible?
Both ways are great for me. If some of the questions are a bit more in depth, I would like that. It's more of a package. But for questions like that, that's just something that didn't make the cut. Specifically, the how did they identify? Because that was one of the first things that I actually looked at going through this information. And I'm just in the background here trying to scramble to find it. But yeah. Please, if you have any questions, just do a tweet at me or DM me, whatever you're more comfortable with. I'm totally down with both. But
we might sorry.
Oh, yeah, no problem. I was just saying, go ahead with other questions because I do kind of want to see if I can answer this for some people.
Cool.
Yeah, the only thing I was going to add to that, maybe next year we could add additional questions if it's not too much, either collecting data on like, have you witnessed harassment or have you experienced harassment, not necessarily just left the job due to harassment. Maybe collect a little bit more of the current picture, because leaving because of harassment is a pretty big, like that's the ultimate, right? Like, I assure you the amount of people that have experienced harassment or witnessed harassment is much higher. Sorry, my camera's doing the thing again.
So one of the other things that was sort of a common thread that was, or a focal point of some of the data was generally like the impact of leadership on teams. So the most reported struggle for people who are not satisfied was leadership. The least reported struggle in very satisfied is leadership. How do you think that reflects either in your own teams or, I don't know. I don't actually have a question. I'm just like, interesting, right? Does anybody want to talk about it?
Yeah, I mean, I say it, and we said it a lot at Epic, is that people don't quit the job, they quit their leads. Because that's that person's world is their lead. They make the biggest difference in that employee's day to day. So yeah,
I would like to see
totally agree.
Additional data on what do people constitute leadership as well. For example, my last job, my leads, my personal leads, were actually really nice people, really great. Most of well, at least for half the job, they didn't know what I did. The other half they did. But I got my leads changed around, right? They were awesome people, but they didn't really know how to facilitate me because the people above them weren't good leaders, right? And I also know from people who are currently still there, they enjoy their job, they like their team, they enjoy the day-to-day. They hate executive. Executive is making them miserable because of the decisions that they're doing, the things that they're saying, the double speak, the lies or blatant, truths that are being hidden, or like as I said earlier, like they were touting the whole like, we adjust for cost of living, right? Because that's fair. But then someone picked up and said, that's not what you tell me when I'm hiring people. You're telling me to hire the cheaper people, right? Mm-hmm. And so that's, when people see that, it's, for me, it was a really, like, I was very, very distressed at that job, because every day it was something new that exec had messed up. But my personal boss was great. My personal boss was like, how can I make your job better? How can I make you grow in your job, right? And the problem was the people above him didn't see my job as valuable.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I think in my opinion, when I think of what leadership would mean, I would consider like everyone above me. like I would consider that my personal lead, who probably, you're right, has the most effect on my day-to-day, as well as the leadership of the company. Because if I don't believe in what we're making or what we're shipping, then like I'm still probably not happy at my job, right? Like I think that adds to the frustrations of the studio thing that where we see like people leaving. I think I mean, like, in my opinion, this is great to hear and like sad to hear. It's kind of like hearing like exercise is good for your body and that and it makes you live longer. It's like, such power, and also, oh no, such power, kind of thing. Where it's like we work in an industry that is famously bad at training their leads, and that's pretty upsetting. Like, I wonder if we had better programs in place, because leadership is such a big thing in the industry, whether it be your immediate lead or your higher up lead, that like if we had training for leads, we had better management, we had better ways to support people, especially younger people who are trying to grow and stay in this industry, if maybe we wouldn't see so much like transience in the games industry. Like, people would be happier to stay with the video games, because you're right, like nobody's doing this for money. So like, if they were happier with their leadership, like maybe we would see less studios that people have worked at. Maybe not, like, who knows. But I think, like I said, like I think that it's a great thing. Scares me, because like I think leadership is really scary, because I understand that that's such power in terms of what you have on your team and how you affect their day-to-day. So I think that, I mean, I hope that anyone in a leadership position, or anyone going into a leadership position, really thinks about that, about how much effect that you have on the people below.
Yeah, maybe we could like add some additional questions. Sorry, we're just like add questions, but maybe we can try and modify questions that exist to kind of, instead of say, why are you dissatisfied, or like, what's dissatisfying being leadership, more like, why are you dissatisfied with leadership? Like, what specific, specifically about leadership is it? I think that might help.
No.
Yeah. So I've got just two more questions here of my own, but before, go ahead.
Adam, did you find the data?
Yeah, I got the numbers.
Nice.
So just for whoever asked the question. So for this year, people who say that they quit due to harassment, for cisgendered men, we have 9%, or 9 people, I should say, 9 cisgender men, or in other terms, that's 3.4% of the cisgender men sample. For cisgender women, we see 3 cisgender women, or 4% of all cisgender women. And for non-cisgender individuals, we see 1 non-cisgender individual, or 3.4% of the non-cisgender individual sample / population for this response set. I hope that answers your question.
Yeah, definitely.
It's kind of flat. I'm quite surprised at that.
I
know.
Yeah.
I was too.
I mean, as data, is this big enough of a sample size to derive any kind of trend from it? It seems not enough to gather a trend on this.
The reason why I keep pushing just the importance that more and more people in the industry respond to the survey is we really do want to see get a really good estimate of what the composition of the industry is. I mean, with 370, we can make a pretty darn good guess at this point, I would say. But just getting more people, we're talking like a rule of statistics would be about 30, over 30 per each of those groups. So, 30 non-cisgendered individuals, that kind of idea. We can really start making some solid inferences from that. But overall, I would say that this data, considering we're talking about 370, I believe, individuals, that's pretty good.
That's actually, I'm so glad you mentioned it, is one of the things I was going to ask. I know that 370 is only actually a few shy of our largest number ever, which I think was the first survey. But
Okay.
why do you think folks are hesitant to fill out these types of surveys? And more importantly, how do you think we can broaden our reach? This is to the room, not just Adam.
I wish I knew.
Money and sentiment.
Because I've
I know-
tried. I've sent them to like my teams at Epic, and
Did you offer them $5?
No, I
Money's
glued a
not a
dollar bill
motivator,
to the
Saul.
envelope.
Yeah.
Okay, sorry. Did
Are you
you,
tainting our data? Bribe these people.
Well, I mean, to be fair, like, I have taken a lot of pointless surveys because there was a possibility that I might win like $100 or something like that in my time, when I had the time to do that type of stuff. But I think maybe you have to work to frame it and why it's beneficial to them. But I also think there has to be, like, I think our survey doesn't take that long to complete. I do think any bits where you have to write things definitely will cause people to drop out, or like not do it because it's just like, I have to type. The more clicky buttons you can give them to tick or sliders is a lot easier to get them to respond, I'd imagine. But I'm sure, Adam, I'm probably talking over you in terms of like, I know how this works.
I mean, I would agree with you in the fact that I would never, unless it's very key to the data, never force someone to do free response. Or if you do, please give them some questions that help them like subconsciously prime themselves before they get into the free response. Because if you just give someone like a survey and it's a bunch of free response, how do you feel about the project you just used? I don't know. I use it to unclog my drain. How am I supposed to feel about this thing? That kind of idea. But in terms of getting people to take this survey time after time, it really is about optimizing the length of the survey, or else you're going to get attrition, which is basically jumping ship midway through. It's our fancy psychometrician word. Also, talking about incentives, that is always a wonderful idea. One of the questions on the feedback survey this time around is what people would maybe like to see as an incentive for completing the 2023 survey. Just please note that I did put in italics besides money. And just overall, when you're designing a survey, make sure they're easy to read. There's not that many questions, but you get to the point at what you're trying to get at. And let people know how it benefits them. I would say is the big points of getting people to take a survey.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I agree, and I realize I didn't take the survey. Sorry.
What?
I didn't take the survey.
Wow. Leave.
Myself. I forgot. But like, so some people are going to be lazy and forget. Again, me. And some people also aren't going to do a survey because it feels like work and they're lazy and they don't want to. And so that is where incentives come in. Because I think we actually did discuss this when we were talking about like what we could do for surveys, in the future. And if it has a personal incentive, sometimes that helps. I do also think, I mean, I already told you, Mike, I'll tell everyone, I'm shameless in this area. I do think that the publicizing of the data as well, like to see how, like the benefits of what the data shows us. I'm hoping that will also be a big draw. I promise I will fill out the survey next year. I can't. But I think that that's also helpful as well, because like it is beneficial, and like these are the benefits, because we get better results and better data as it goes on. So if these are things that people want to know about, then like the best way to do it is to fill out the survey, and then also get your friends to fill out the survey. I will make sure Mike makes me fill out the survey and sends it directly to me next time as well.
I
Maybe
wonder if
can
we could do
start
something.
offering- Oh, go for it, Jay.
Oh, thanks. I was just gonna say, I wonder if we could do something like the in-person events like GDC. We actually print out some and hand out little pencils, you know, and have a Dropbox or something. Just other ways other than just digital.
Yeah. A survey filling out party on the AnimState Twitch.
And then we'll have a subsequent data inputting the survey party.
Yeah, that's right.
Um,
We can invest in scanning machines and all sorts of stuff.
oh man, Scantron, bring it back.
No,
Bring it back.
please don't.
That's a sign. That's a sign of a data scientist crying right now.
Yeah, the data science degree was under educational psychology. Please don't bring Scantron back.
I liked filling in those little bubbles.
So any final pieces of data that anyone wants to dive into before my last two little points? So the one question I asked to Adam, that I asked to Adam earlier is, do you think it's valuable for people to talk about these results with their team and with their managers in their workplace?
Actually, that was what I was going to say in response to that. If you tell people they fill out the survey, they can use that as bargaining material to get a raise. But but we all know that doesn't work. You know, you present them a number and they're like, and
Yeah.
So even if it's data backed, but yeah, sorry, that was my side.
That's fair.
Yeah, I mean, I do think that it does help people. I know that when I've searched, like, you know, like Gamedev paid me or something like that, like there are people out there who, when talking about, you know, the different salary things, they actually have linked the AnimState survey results as a piece of information that people can use to figure out, like, if you are going to a new company and you are trying to figure out like how much you should be asking for, or wondering if their offer is a good offer, then like this is a way to check. You know, this is a nice way to check to see if like you're within the bands of, you know, how many years of experience you have for the West Coast or East Coast or Central Coast as well. I think like it's nice to have that information out there, because I know that like when I entered the industry, like I did not know, and I had to go base it off of the offer that my unpaid internship had given me, which was a very low number, especially, and was not at all adjusted for cost of living. So glad we have that now. So I think it is.
Yeah, my first job, that was like, you're gonna pay me how much?
Money. Very little
Whoa,
money.
you mean indefinitely? The money keeps coming?
I do work, you give money. Do people know about this?
Yeah.
I think it's interesting. Definitely the salary information I think is incredibly valuable. Big Drecky says, as someone is seemingly in a perpetual job search, the data has been useful in trying to figure out how much is reasonable to ask. Definitely. But I also think that if you are at your studio, whether or not you are in a place where you feel like your team or your company is facing some challenges, or whether or not you just want to be more enticing and just always be getting better as a part of your career and your team journey, I think a lot of the information, again, pointing back to what provides job satisfaction. How can we be more enticing in this hiring process? What are people looking for? One of the things that's called out, one of the most reported struggles for people in the very satisfied group is hiring. And so if hiring is a struggle, like what are the ways in which you can, I think there's a lot of data here that sort of explains the things that you can do to make the place where you are working be something that is more welcoming to people, that is going to provide people with the things that they might be looking for outside of just the factor of better pay. So I definitely think that talking about this with your teams and just personally always looking to get better, and even just building comfortable communication in the community of your workplace is super important. So
I'm also
like I said, I
hoping
really
that-
hope people leads kind of take that how important leadership is in terms of job satisfaction into account, because I feel like, you know, like I feel like it's a common talk of like, you know, like, oh, how can we retain our company or our employees better? It always feels like people are on the move or whatever kind of thing. Like it feels like, well, people are telling you kind of what, and probably people are telling
they
you.
don't want the answer.
Yeah,
You
people
know?
are telling you their exit interviews as well, like what is wrong, like why they left. And so like
I don't
know,
think
I guess
most
it's
people are clear in their exit interviews. I think most
true.
just
Oh,
smile
I
and
People
leave.
was
won't even
very
scorch the
clear.
ground.
Or yeah,
I
some
was-
people are very clear. Some people are like, I don't
they
want to
have
burn
pages.
bridges. So.
Burn bridges, yeah. It's
Yeah,
true.
I
I mean,
didn't
like,
care.
how many useful postmortems have you been at in game studios as well? But yeah, I mean, like, you would hope that people would still take some of that stuff into consideration, though.
Yeah, this survey has lots of good data, and it's just power. It's something, if you take the time to dig in, it could verify, you know, maybe some instincts you have, or not verify it. So I think it's really useful.
Yeah, the sucky thing is like you say, like, oh, companies are always asking, like, oh, you know, how can we be better? But the reality is, like, the answers that you propose to them are not the answers that they're going to act on or want to hear. They're like, yeah, aside from changing the diversity makeup of our leadership or offering you more money, right? Or compensating you in any way, you know, more pizza.
I think it. I mean, it definitely depends on the company. But I've been at a company before where 3 people quit because of a bad lead, and on their exit interview, they just didn't want to trash anybody on their way out. The 4th person who left because of that lead was more like you, Saul. They're like, I'm leaving because this person is ruining my life. And then they dug in and found the prior 3 people had quit because of that bad lead. And that lead got fired literally within 5 minutes of the exit interview. They
That
rushed
is
them out.
very unusual. I
mean, I think it's hard for anyone to speak, because like the industry is a small industry, and even if someone is fired, it does not mean that they will not go to a new company and be there, as witnessed very recently. So I think that it's really hard for people to, I mean, like, we live in a very empathetic community, honestly, in my opinion anyway, of just like, you know, it's hard to speak up when you know you could be the reason someone loses their job. It's a lot. It's a lot on you.
I mean, sometimes I wish. Maybe I'm the one that's not empathic, but I wish I was the reason someone would lose their job sometimes. If they deserve it.
Yeah. Well,
But
just
seriously, no, you're right. Like people are generally very.
Oh,
They
and
just, especially if
I,
you're leaving, you just want to leave quietly and get your new job and no drama, no hassle.
Yeah.
So, and I want to clarify my story because the lead did not get fired; they just got pulled off the project, and
and therein lies the rub.
Yeah. So they were given a chance to become a good lead later, but they solved the problem by removing the lead.
Which
they solved it for someone else, but someone else is now going to have.
Yeah,
you know, I saw that too, where a person was removed because they were like a team literally mutinied and said, we're not going to work if this person's a director. And so they removed that director, they gave them another job, and they sat in that other job for a few years until the dissent had died down, and then lo and behold, they're back in the director role again.
I think it's really I mean, that is definitely, I think, the most common story is, you know, failing upwards, as they say. But I do think that Luciano Muniz in chat says a lead doesn't need to be fired for being a bad lead once. They should get leadership training, which, depending on the context of the badness of the leadership, I think is really important. Like, if somebody is overwhelmed and they just are constantly overwhelmed and they don't know what to do with it, I think, maybe pull them off, give them training. If somebody's a bad lead because they're screaming at people and maybe spanking people or like whatever's going on there,
bad lead covers a lot.
It's also like not just leads in the industry. In my experience, like there are people that I've worked with, you know, on the same level as me who are not leads, who were not like, you know, took credit for things that, you know, that were not theirs, and, you know, like did a lot of other things as well, like never did their job or everything like that. And I think we've all been there as well, where that person has been given second, third, and fourth chances, and in the end was still not let go and maybe left to their own accord. You know what I mean? Like we are an industry that like, I mean, it kind of depends on who you are. Like, obviously, like
unless they're a marginalized person,
right
then
there we go.
they're out the
That's
door.
what I was going with. That was what I was going to say next. Where I was like, this person was a cis man, but you know, like obviously in other cases there have been people who've been fired very quickly for very little. So
Yeah. Sorry.
So
I just love
the
that
weird
all of
thing
us are like, ha ha ha, so funny, what a joke. But
Yeah.
it's like just a sad reality.
Yeah.
And on that note of sad reality, I'm going to take the reins back here a little bit and do a scoot a teeny wrap up here because I think we're at time. The one final note that I would love to leave, not just you, Ju Li, Sol, and Jay with, but one of my favorite stats pointed out in the presentation that there's up to 7 titles shipped over a career. And I don't know about you, but when I hear that, I sort of take stock of where I'm at, and it's like, oh, I guess I'm about halfway through. So whether you've worked on, or you're on 1 title right now, or whether you're on 6 titles right now, thinking about what you bring to a team and how you can build up and how you can make positive change for the people who are coming after you, I think it's really important to think about that. Because if you're only getting 7 titles, make sure they're good ones, or at least the team is great.
Maybe next time we can make sure that anyone who works at Rockstar, Valve, or sometimes Blizzard is not allowed to answer that question.
That's fair. Yeah, that's fair.
So to close things out, I think we should just do one quick round, a little sign off. If you have a social media account that you wouldn't mind people finding you online, why don't you tell us what it is? We'll start with you again, Adam.
Sounds good. You can find me on Twitter at A1C1ARK. Yeah. Don't look up for me anywhere else. I don't use that Facebook.
You can find me on Twitter as well at Jewel Short Stuff, but I probably wouldn't follow me. I just post cat pictures, so I do not post anything
Very good
useful.
cat pictures.
Yes, but my cats are very adorable. That's basically it.
I suppose if we did it in order of introductions, I am Waffles on, not Waffles, but Waffles on Twitter. And I also post cat pictures, except my cats look more like rats than cats. So.
I already have you on Twitter. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. I'm on Twitter as well at Hosfross, HOSFROSS.
And I am Lana Bachynski on Twitter or anywhere. I am at Latieni, that is LATIENIE. Can we please get hearts, emojis? I'm always inclined to say rats in the chat, but that's the wrong stream. Anything you want for our wonderful panelists, Ju Li, Sol, Jay, and of course, our amazing data scientist, Adam Clark. Thank you all so much for being here. Don't forget to take a look at the survey about the survey and fill it out. Let us know what you want to see next year, and keep your eyes peeled for the AnimState of the Industry 2023 coming to the Google Forums near you.
And thank you, Lana, for hosting.
Yeah, thank
you're
you.
welcome.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
Happy to do it. All right. Bye, everybody. Thanks, chat.
Bye.
Bye.
ばく